Hi everyone! So last week we got a shocker from ECB, and Draghi suddenly sent a very dovish tone in last week's ECB meeting, and the markets have been really shocked by it. But come to think of it, if you look at the general picture, I think they're just mirroring how less hawkish the Fed has become. So if the Fed continued to be hawkish in 2019, then the Eurozone, the EU and the ECB will slowly start to get a little hawkish, especially they're pretty much oversold now. And but since the Fed has been less hawkish recently, they're gonna mirror that. They're like Japanese yen, the BOJ, which they're trying to, and also China, in which they're trying to still make their trades more competitive. At least their currencies and their exports more competitive. That's why they have to do that, obviously. And so I should have taken that into consideration, but unfortunately I focused more on effect of Brexit and GBP when it comes to Euro, and forgot about USD's impact on Euro. So anyway, and if it weren't for the bearish GBP last week, this could have been my very first losing week. Thankfully, I was able to recover the latter part of the week because of the pound bouncing down. So, anyway, let's get started. One of them being is, well, we kind of performed well with EURNZD. This was an exception. This was the only Euro pair that performed well last week. So this was the idea last week, and this is how it went. Because NZD started recovering, so props to NZD for that. And the other pair that went well was GBP AUD. This was the idea last week, and this is how it went. I wasn't able to sell it at 1.85500 because I was focusing more on Euro pairs and I think CAD pairs at that time, which is great. Or else this could have been a loss because it still continued to climb up to near 1.88, almost at 1.88 before going down again. I think that will continue to go down again this week, if not at near 1.83, at least at 1.835, which I believe is if you look at the daily or weekly chart, is the 2017 low, if I'm not mistaken. And then this one, unlike with GBP AUD, I sold this immediately at near 1.75, and this continued to bounce up because CAD was, I was expecting Canadian dollar to finally recover, to bounce up, but it didn't right away. So it continued to go up at 1.77, which is like my weekly this blue rectangle here is like my weekly seasonality forecast, and it bounced from that level, from the edge, but I wasn't able to sell it immediately. I was only just noticed it and considered putting a sell stop order at 1.75540 and just add a really tight target profit there at 1.744. So yeah. And then the other pair that performed well last week was GBP This was the idea last week. This is how it went. So glad it went down to exactly I think this was the 0 Fibonacci level, a 145.5. And then another GBP pair is GBPUSD. This was the idea last week, and this is how it went. Initially, I set my target profit near 1.3500, but instead of closing that because the moment it started going down, it hasn't reached my target profit yet, which is great. So I put a trailing stop order and moved my target profit near 1.30. So yeah. And lastly, the other pair that went well last week was EURNZD CAD. This was the idea last week, and this is how it went. I was so nervous of getting whipsawed, especially my stop loss is really tight, and I mean, as much as possible, I'm trying to avoid having a really tight stop loss just to make it look like it has a good risk reward ratio. But I should really stop doing this because it's so risky, and well, for the buy is good, but I mean, considering the risk, the reward isn't really that worth it. So there you go. And for the pairs that didn't perform well last week, we got EURCAD. This was the idea last week. Oh, my cat is hungry. Anyway, this was the idea last week, and this is how it went. Unfortunately, it didn't reach my target at 0.95. It just went down. Canadian dollar just just recovered quickly. Then the other pair that didn't perform well last week was EURUSD. This was the idea last week, and this is how it went. And then another pair that didn't perform well was EURCAD. Unfortunately, this didn't reach my target at 1.525. It went down, and I wasn't able to manually close that before. Could have been at least a gain or something, slight gains. Another pair that didn't went well last week, EURUSD. I was really very optimistic when it comes to EURUSD. I thought it's gonna form a bowl shape in the chart, and I was really planning to manually close this trade before the ECB news, but unfortunately my stop loss got hit. It's really conservative stop loss got hit even before the ECB news release. So there you go, but it's alright. It's just 30 pips. And then lastly, I've showed it earlier. I sustained a loss initially in GBPUSD before trying to make up for it during the later part of the week. So there you go. And now we move on to the trading ideas for this week.